Hello and welcome back to the Let's Glow Show. It's Amanda Sweet, the Creative Fairy Godmother, and I help people get fly, make friends, and save the world through community. And every single week, we talk to a creative entrepreneur about how they glowed up. So today, we have a very, very special guest. I was telling Labrie yesterday, like how excited I was for this morning. We have Ellie Gonzales Stone. Welcome to the Let's Glow.
Hi, Amanda. I'm so happy to be here.
So happy you're here. For those of you that don't know, I lived in Texas for a little while, and Ellie was like my first homegirl, my very first homegirl. And you're my first guest from Texas, actually. I was thinking about that.
Really? Woo!
Like, I was like, we haven't had anybody else from Texas on yet. Like, you're the first one.
That is so awesome. Well, I'm so proud to be representing Texas and the experience that you had over here. You left your mark, Amanda. You really did. You really did.
So did you. I was just saying, like, backstage, how we first met. So I remember, I think Labrie and I might have been biking around downtown Denton. So we lived in Denton, Texas at the time. And I think we might have been biking and we heard music. We like to listen to the sounds of the streets. And we stopped and we pulled over, and there you were hosting an event, and you were like smiling from ear to ear with a microphone in hand. You're like, come sing a song. And you guys were doing karaoke, and your arms were like wide open. Like, just energy was all wide open. And I was like, okay, let's go in, see what's going on. And like the Diva Girl Ellie has been home since.
I'm like, oh my gosh, who Diva Girl Ellie, man? I still identify with her, even though I've slowed down life quite a bit. But it has definitely been fun meeting all the people that I've met in Denton, living out here. It's such a creative town. It's very, very much a tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody, even though it's not such a small town. Everybody's so active, and you just can't help but get involved in some form or fashion, whether it be music, whether it be art. Obviously I was involved with poetry and Lost Poet Lounge, and founded Lost Poet Lounge, but also the radio show. Diva Girl Ellie, or the Denton Vibe with Diva Girl Ellie, was a huge, huge thing for me. And it lent to giving me those experiences with so many different flavors of people. And I absolutely loved it. I absolutely was so blessed to have that and have you on the show as well. And so many other awesome people that I got to meet.
It was so beautiful. That was my first interview in Texas. So it was with you, and you're such a natural at it. You're so good at just like pulling ideas and thoughts and being like on beat with the station. Like, that was so beautiful. And working, like, that interview was pivotal for me, because I feel like it was the first interview I had in Denton, Texas. And it was the first like time I had like really been doing anything publicly in Texas. And I feel like everybody in Detroit was like, what's she doing?
Yeah.
Where? Like, okay, right. What's happening? And it just like, it changed. I say this a lot. I feel like moving away was really, really good for us creatively, because we got to like become.
Yeah.
I got to become the Creative Fairy Godmother. I feel like I wouldn't have become her. You say like, oh, Diva Girl Ellie, like that was a different version of you. I feel the same. Like, when I moved to Texas, I was like, who am I? What are my new boundaries? Because I remember leaving Detroit feeling burnt out. I was burnt out. I was letting people like just bulldoze over my boundaries. I was saying yes to everybody. And I was like, I don't want to present myself that way, because that's not how I want to be. I didn't like the burnt out feeling. I didn't like the used feeling. And I remember like just going out and being like, I am more confident in myself. I am more comfortable with myself than ever. And then not having to like worry if anybody would like clock me and like, you're not usually this, you don't usually set boundaries like this. I'm used to using you, like, and it was amazing.
It's a real thing, as far as, I can relate to that whole, I wasn't moving a state away, but I grew up in Dallas. I've been in Dallas since I was 3. I basically lived my whole life over there until I met my husband. And so moving from Dallas to Denton had its challenges. It was a minor culture shock because I was used to the hustle and bustle of the city and having everything accessible to me, being involved with the art scene and having friends connected everywhere and go here, go there. And then I got to Denton, and at that time it was very different than when you got here. It was, I dare to say, different people have different experiences, but my experience was, where is everybody? If you weren't a student, where's the rest of the people? What is there to do out here? And it was very different, a different culture. When I got here, I was like, where's my people at? Where's my Hispanic, Latino, Mexican families at? Where's my people? And I had that shock. And so I remember feeling all of that and thinking, something's got to change. So I remember mentally thinking, I need to change my environment, or I need to create my environment. And so when someone invited me to do an open mic at one of their businesses for poetry, I absolutely jumped at the chance. And ever since then, it left an impression on me, because obviously I loved writing poetry, but I got the itch. And I'm like, I got to do this again. Even though it was a small crowd, it was probably about 20, 25 people. I'm like, I love this. That's, yeah. And I needed to do it again. And eventually, after it churning in my mind quite a while, I remember telling my husband, I need to do something. I want to do something with poetry. And 2014 Lost Poet Lounge was born. And it's not something that you say you go and attend meetings every month. It's just a concept, an idea, where I would produce shows and invite people to come perform. And so it turned into, just little pop-up shows and stuff like that. And so now it's evolved into, after, obviously the pandemic and all of that, it's turned into, Lost Poet Lounges, where I now do my poetry online. So it's my, poetry being presented on Spotify or iTunes or whatever. And so it's just been an evolving process. And obviously, people here and there have had their touch on my heart, and the influences and the emphasis on community and whatnot. And I really do cherish all of that. So I do understand reinventing yourself. It happens in cycles, and you just kind of go with the flow. And obviously, the pandemic changed a lot of things. So, how did I stay creative during that time? It was really hard, because we were completely cut off, and I was a social butterfly, just like yourself. So it was very challenging. And then I realized quickly that, wow, all these years, my time was being spread so thin with so many things that I don't want to say that didn't matter, because they did at the time. But then I had to reassess where, each of those pockets of time, where was I spending stuff that I was just wasting energy? So it put a lot into perspective. And then I'm like, okay, here's what I want to keep. Here's what I really don't need. And it's not conducive to me at this point in life. And it was what it was at that time. It was beautiful. Or, I don't need to do this anymore. It didn't bring me joy or whatnot. So now it's like, I have an Instagram page completely dedicated to just my own niche down, my niche down version of what I love doing and what I'm passionate about. And it's pretty faceless. It is completely faceless. And I get to express myself creatively with photography without, having to be present. So I absolutely love it. It's just a different stage in life. And, you just kind of go with the flow. But I still obviously do Lost Poet Lounge. I have a show coming up that I'm doing at the Greater Denton Arts Council. We got some new poets that I've been rubbing elbows with. I'm really excited.
When is that?
What was that?
When is it?
Oh, it's June 27th, and it's Lost Poet Lounge, Soul Bloom. Soul Bloom I started last year, and it was a workshop. It was my first poetry workshop, and it was basically kind of like a little guided tour of trying to get those emotions flowing, to put it down on paper. A lot of people they journal all the time. Obviously I journal. People do it for different reasons. People do it for different needs or just artistic expression. But I wanted to tap into things that were really, soul hitting, things that were in your heart that maybe you don't really talk about, because I am a firm believer that poetry is healing. It's very underrated. It's an underrated art. And I feel that, if you're connected, you kind of know the impact it has. But,
Yeah.
a lot of people are like, well, I'm not a poet. I don't know how to rhyme. And it's not just that. There's so many more aspects, of poetry. And it's really been healing for me, as well as just also a celebration of life, a celebration of emotions that I feel. And so I wanted to help facilitate people jumping into their emotional vehicle and saying, let's go. I want them to be able to say, I have something that's just choking me and I don't know what to do with this, and I need to get it out. And poetry is a very healthy way to deal with your emotions, especially if you're not ready to vocalize that with someone else. And the thing
Sure.
that's so beautiful about poetry is that once you start writing your emotions down, you really don't understand it until you cross the bridge, that you're preparing your mind, your heart, your soul to release those words. And eventually you're going to share it with one person, even if it's just them reading it, even if you don't speak it. And then it changes you. You have some sort of transformation in you. And so, some people get the itch to perform. I definitely did. And other people get the itch to share it in a more private setting, or maybe they just share it online, faceless as well. There's a lot of people that do all kinds of things online on social media. So it's very healing. And you also step out of your prisons when you do stuff like that, when you're trying to release some demons, when you're trying to get out of that emotional prison of whatever it is, or just, you put yourself in a box or whatnot, and you're just like ready to bust out with happiness. So many people try to say, no, this is how you have to be. And that's not you. And you've been silenced. So there's so many aspects and beauty about photography that I just wish people would embrace more. And just, if you're not into the poetry, then great, but support poetry. It's a good healing art. I feel all art is really healing for so many people on so many levels.
I 100% agree. I love that you're doing the Lost Poet Lounge. I remember like a time where poetry and poetry events, and maybe I'm just not in the like social circle anymore, but like I don't see a lot of poetry events happening like they used to. And not a lot of people know this, but I got my real current public speaking like style from doing poetry. So I used to do spoken word, I used to do poetry, and like Labrie always says, he's like, what happened to that spoken word version of you? Because I was like doing spoken word events and talking about all kinds of stuff that I was processing. And I realized now that it was a lot of processing and a lot of public processing. There's something special that happens for me, at least, when I'm like, I'll write like a poem down, or I'll write like a skeleton of a poem down, and then I'll just like riff in reality, and you're getting energy back from the audience, and people are moving with you, and like new things come out, and you're like reflecting on the poem that you just like built on stage with the energy of the people in the space, and you're like, oh my God, like I processed, like I didn't even know that was in there, like it just came out, it just like, existed because of the harmony that's happening with like the people vibing with your energy, and like it just comes out. And I haven't gone, and I believe fully that each interview is like really like every interview that I have on the Let's Glow show is like just like perfectly timed. And I've been working through a lot of like the grief from losing our baby recently, and I've been trying to like figure out how to get it out of my body. And like this past weekend I started feeling like I was really off these last couple weeks, just like not somewhere else. I was here, but I wasn't here. And I told myself, like I used to dance in my bedroom all the time. I used to like spin my hula hoop, I would be dancing, I'd be singing, I'd be writing, doing poetry. And like I haven't done that in a long time. And maybe because I'm busy, whatever the case may be, but I caught myself like I'm pointing this way because my hula hoop's right over there. And like I just blasted the music, I whipped my hula hoop out, and it felt so good to just like move and like participate in the music. And I was like, and now I'm kind of like itching for it. I'm like, what else? And like writing is such a huge thing for me, and I just haven't been doing it lately. And I have all these
Yeah.
excuses as to why. I'm like, okay, but like I'm scrolling on Instagram and I'm doing like I'm watching TV, I'm relaxing. But like,
Really?
am I though? Like, is it really like numbing and like just zoning out and like watching TV? Because I've recently gotten rid of all of my streaming platforms except for Disney Plus because I'm on my sister's Disney Plus. So other than like Disney Plus, Amazon, we don't really watch a lot of TV. Like on Friday, we'll watch stuff like while we're eating. And even lately, we're not watching TV while we're eating. We're just kind of like sitting outside and talking to each other. And I feel like I'm craving some other version of expression. This is one of those things. But I think after talking to you, I should probably just start writing poetry again because
you will. You need to.
It's like I can feel it. Like I have like journals on journals on journals. When I first when I was 11 years old, I think you know bits and pieces of this story, but when I was 11 years old, I got caught doing drugs at school and I got put on alcohol and drug probation and I was grounded. When I say grounded, like grounded to the
life sentence.
It was like a 2-year sentence for real because I was doing probation and I was grounded from the courts. I had to do all this volunteer work, which is where I got exposed to volunteering. But my dad was like, what are you going to do? You're not going to watch TV. You're going to do your homework. Yeah. And here's a journal and a pen. It's yours. Nobody will ever look at it. You'll never have to worry about anybody like prying. But the first thing he had me do was write the whole story down of what happened.
Oh, wow.
He was like, you don't have to share it with us. You don't have to tell us what happened. He was like, but this is your space to let it all out. And then
that's wonderful.
I've been just like banging it out in the journals. But lately, I would say like when I moved to Texas, I kind of just like got disconnected from it. And maybe, I don't know, but I think it's maybe now my time to just like,
you know, I would say I encourage it, especially, you know, obviously you have a lot of emotions about the recent tragedy that happened, and you need to be able to express that. And you have posted stuff about it, but I feel like when you dig a little deeper, it is very healing. It allows you that space that you really do need to lean into those emotions. And everybody, you know, there is absolutely nothing that anybody can say to you that's going to make you feel better. And and that's kind of an isolating feeling. But at the same time, you stand in the stillness, in the darkness of those emotions, because, you know, I would imagine that is a very dark feeling. You know, there was so much hope put into that. So when you stand with those feelings and you stand in silence with them, it allows you to appreciate the beauty of not just the experience, but the beauty of, in, for lack of a better word, it's just there is beauty in tragedy as well. You know, there's a beauty in tragedy. And I say that from experience. When you experience tragedy that deep, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this feeling? I've never felt this before. Nobody knows what I'm feeling. So you kind of have to walk through it, and you have to, you know, I have a life motto that, speaking of tragedy, when I lost my nephew, he was 19 when it happened. All of our family were really close. You know, he was my first nephew. So when I lost him, I quickly learned my life motto, which is look for your love and miracles in life. You're going to find them. When someone leaves your life, God is going to leave love and miracles in their place for you to find them and find the beauty after they've passed. So I really clung to that, and I tried to find the beauty even in the tragedy, and I've tried to live my life according to that, because there's beauty. You know, I'm a religious person. I'm very spiritual. I cling to my faith, but you know, God's not going to waste a hurt. He's not going to waste a hurt at all. And so he's going to use that, and you can use that to fuel yourself. You know, you are in a position where you are closely working with all these wonderful people. People come to you like a little, you know, moth to the flame. And so, you you have such a powerful influence over people. You're a light. You are definitely a light. So when you have those experiences, they either make you or break you, and
Yeah.
people can take that and use it as a fuel to be a better human, is what I'm
Mhm.
essentially coming to. Let those, even those dark experiences, shape you
Oh,
in a good
yeah.
way. Let that, experience be something beautiful, and don't waste the hurt, because it can definitely, losing my nephew shaped me. It shaped me as a woman, as an aunt, as a human being. It left such a mark on me that it
Yeah.
shaped me. It transformed me, and the way I think, and the way I feel, and the way I process stuff. So write that stuff down, stand in the silence with your own emotions, and just let it flow. Let it flow, whether you share it or not. And I'm pretty sure you would share it, because you're that type of person that, you want to let people know they're not alone. And that's a hard thing to deal with. I know Mother's Day was really hard for many people for many different reasons. And me being a person who wanted to be a mom, and it just never happened for us. I
Mhm.
also get that. It's not the same situation, but I also feel that tinge of pain
Well,
every Mother's Day. Yeah, the longing is there. I've made
yeah.
peace with it at this point in my life, but you know um it's there. And how did I deal with that, having to watch everybody celebrate and feel happy and be happy for my mom, my sisters, and those that I love, and be authentic to myself? So I wrote about it, and so I'll share that with you soon.
I really
I'll
love
dig it up, and I'll share it with you. It was a
you're
letter to
ready.
my, yeah, it was a letter to my, to the child that never was, basically. So it was
Hmm.
something I needed to get out, and I wrote about it. So
Something that some people have said to me recently that might resonate with you is like, you know, I remember the last swap that I did, people, the previous swap, I announced that I was pregnant. Then
mhm.
here we are at the next swap, which was like in May and early
Yeah.
May. And people were, this was the first time I had seen a lot of people since I had made the announcement and then the second announcement. And
Mhm.
somebody said to me, they're like, but you are a mother. You are the creative fairy godmother. You've mothered this community and you've built this
Yep.
experience for all of these people. And like, while you don't have like a physical child right now, like this is your baby. And that when I
Mhm.
think of you, like you have such a mothering, nurturing, loving energy. And think of the Lost Poet Lounge and all of the people that you gave opportunities to through the radio show. Like all of those things are like you birthed those things, and each poem is a baby of yours, and like is an opportunity to celebrate your motherhood as like an earthly being that creates things. Like you are an earthly feminine being that creates things. That is like a mother, you
Yeah.
know? And while we don't have physical children, I do feel like I don't know, like just being around you in Texas was so like home for me
Oh,
because you
thank you.
energy about you that I'm just like, I need some time with Ellie. I need to go. And every time I was, I felt like I was with my sisters. I felt like I was with my mom. I felt like I was with all of these like women that were like motherly figures to me. Not saying that like being around you was like being around my mom, but
Get
it's
it.
like it's such a mothering energy that like you have it in you and you do it all the time without
Mhm.
even knowing it. And like for me it was a blessing to meet you because I felt less
Oh,
homesick being around you. I felt less like alone being around you. So like you bring family to all of the events that you host. You welcome people.
oh,
You were my first homegirl. Like, and I mean that so seriously. Like
thank
it
you
just
so much.
yeah, it's just you're such a beautiful soul and you nurture everybody that shares space with you. No matter how much you know them, how little you know them, you're just like, come in, let me feed you, let me let me let me speak to your soul. Like how is your soul doing, It's just so refreshing and like it means so much and when you said like God doesn't waste a hurt. I really believe that. I feel like my life has been I've experienced a lot of extremes of things in my
Yeah.
life experience, and I have learned resilience. I have learned how to leverage, and I feel like that is a word that I've been using lately, is like, how can I leverage this? How can I leverage this? But I think I need to come back to the soul of it and be like, how is this going to make me grow as a person? I think I
Mm-hmm.
was in survival mode these last couple months. Like, how am I going to leverage this to keep going? How am I going to use this experience to make me stronger? I'm focusing, but I feel like it's a very masculine feeling, like leverage, strength,
Yeah.
power. And like, I think that's where I was disconnected. And I think maybe that's why dancing was so much for me, because I was like, oh, I'm just like in my body, in my feminine, in expression, and like participating with
Yeah.
this other version of expression that somebody else has gifted me. And so
Yeah.
I feel like the feminine part of me is kind of like crying out for, like, I just want to like express and be and do, I don't know, all of the things.
You're wanting to self-nurture. You're
Yeah.
needing to self-nurture yourself. And that's what that calling is. You're like, I know and it's ticking in your mind, and you're like, I need to do something. I need to do something. And obviously with what you do, you're also a nurturer. You are always present with everyone, and you pour so much into so many people. And that's not to say that you're ignoring yourself, because I know you, and you're like, no, I need my boundaries. I need this. I need a reset. So, it's those inner corners of your own soul and your spirit that you're just, sometimes they get neglected. A lot of times they do, because we have the mentality, just keep going, just accomplish one more thing, let me take care of this one more thing, and then I'll it's always, and then I will take a break,
Yeah.
or I'll address these things. And we do get put on the back burner, and it could be male, female, it doesn't matter. But we sometimes we just are not ready to be present with those emotions, and you're ready now. So
Mhm.
tap into them. And there's so many benefits to standing with yourself in those moments. And I
Mhm.
mean, pouring into other people it's such a beneficial thing. Pouring yourself into other, you tell me I'm nurturing. They used to call me Mother Goose at one of my old jobs, because I had that nurturing. For one, I was the trainer, so they would come and sit with
Okay.
me for 2 weeks. So I nurtured them literally to be prepared for their job. So, and
Great.
then my bosses would make fun of me, because they would always come back and look for help. They're like, man, you're like Mother Goose. They just won't leave your
Great.
nest. They just keep coming back. And it's just that feeling, like you say, I want people to feel welcomed where they're
Yeah.
at. I want people to feel that I am a positive influence on them. And I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means. I mess up and do crazy stuff from time to time, and I'm like, oh crap. But I want to feel that way, because there's times in my life that I haven't felt that. And it's that experience of like, I don't want other people to feel that because of me. So you meet people where they're at. I am a specific person, and I was brought up a certain way, and I have my beliefs, I have my faith, my religion, I'm not you, and I don't expect you to be me.
No.
So you kind of have to meet people where they're at. And I say it on my show, or tell people, we're all a puzzle piece. We are all a puzzle piece. Your
Mhm.
spot does not fit my piece, vice versa.
Mm-mm.
But guess what? We're all connected to make a beautiful, bigger picture. It's a masterpiece. And so
Yeah.
I can't expect you to be abiding by my rules. There's just no way. Then that's why we have so much discord in the world. And it's just, you just can't do that. It's unrealistic. And not only that, you just have to be a light, and that's all you're responsible for doing. It's not your job to fix other people. It's not your job to put expectations on anyone. You just have to be a light. And I hope that I attract people for that light that I want to give and share, and hopefully empower them to do the same. And you just never know how you're going to affect someone. So it's not that I'm always happy 24/7. That's not the reality of life. But you
Yeah.
do feel a certain responsibility. You know what? I've been empowered with people stepping into my event. What experience am I going to give them? There's going to be participants, and there's going to be audience observers. It is my responsibility to make sure that everyone is in a safe space, whether they're
Yeah.
performing or they're experiencing that. And so it's very big for me to tell my performers, I know that I'm not trying to stifle you, but you have to have class, dignity, and respect, not only for the host, the venue, or
Yep.
me as you're, producing the show, but the audience, because you just never know. I tell people all the time, I'm like, you could be sitting right in front of someone who completely is opposite of you. But guess what? You're a human being. And if that human being has an ounce of a heart, it's different than watching TV and being fed what the media wants to feed you, or what, certain people want to feed you. You're a human. Make that connection. Make them question their thoughts. Make them question, am I having the right frame of mind or process of thinking about certain things, especially those hot topics? This person
Yeah.
is real. Their emotions are real. I've never heard this experience in that light. So I always tell them, this is your chance to captivate somebody that might not listen to you otherwise. So I feel
Right.
like if you treat people with class, dignity, and respect, that connection might actually happen organically without you even knowing, because you may
Right.
not even know about it. And that person may go home thinking, I'm a crappy person, you know? And
Or
it might make that question.
yeah,
Well,
they'll
because
be like
I mean,
curious
I'm
about
a crappy person because I've been ugly to other people, is what I mean. I need to stop being ugly to people. You need to question yourself, check yourself. You know,
yeah,
was I rude? Was I disrespectful? Was that,
yeah.
a racist
Where was
comment?
that root?
Was that, yeah. Do I need to question my toxic beliefs that I grew up thinking just because it's always been this way? So you have to
Yeah.
question yourself and keep yourself in check. It's not about, well, we just grew up this way. That's an excuse.
Yes.
You have to kind of understand where your values are. You a good person? Then act like one. Act like a good human being. So
Yeah.
it's that fine line. Don't get me started, because I'm all about, I'm very much, a protector of the underdog. I don't like seeing people mistreated. Nobody does really, but I'm always like, you know what? Find your voice. You need to find your voice. Speak up. You need to stand up for yourself and stand up for others, even if they completely are not who your puzzle piece
Never
is.
know.
You know what? Yeah, we're all connected. We all have to be each other's keeper, basically.
I think, it's interesting moving to Texas, coming from Detroit. I mean, even in Detroit, like even in Michigan in general. So like Michigan as a whole, we don't have to get super political at all, but like Michigan as a whole has a lot of segregation and racism within it. But in Detroit, like in the Metro Detroit area, it's a very diverse area. It's like a super black city. There's a lot of people of color. We have a lot of Middle Eastern people. We have a lot of Asian people. But I will admit that Michigan, well, Detroit, specifically Metro Detroit, is very siloed. Like this city has all of the Mexican people, and this city has all of the black people, and this city has all the Asian people, and this city has all the European people who are immigrants or whatever. And then
Yeah.
like this area is very Jewish. This area is very white.
Hmm.
And it has all of the things. But like I would say that Detroiters perceive Detroit as very diverse. And then going to
Hmm.
Texas, like everybody in my family was like, "Are you guys sure about this? Because look at y'all. Like, look at you guys. Like, both of you are people of color. Like, here's this 6'4" black man. Here's this like mixed woman. We don't even know, like, it's like just racially ambiguous. And you guys are together. Like, what is this experience gonna look like for you? And everybody in our family was like scared for us. Everybody was scared for us. And when we got to Texas, at first we were scared. I would say the first month we were like on our toes. Like there was a couple experiences that we had, and
Hmm.
literally those experiences were like concentrated to the first month. And we never experienced anything like that after that. But like our first month there, we had a couple interactions in like stores and gas stations, and we went to a bar. We walked. I think we were actually, I can't even remember where we went. But we walked in, it felt like everybody's neck snapped. It was like and we were like, just turn around and leave. And we like walked away. We're like, we obviously don't look like the people in here. We're not gonna we're gonna just like slowly back away. We're just like, we're just slowly.
Howdy, folks.
Exactly. Where did we end up at? Oh gosh, why is the name escaping me? It's got all the lights, got all the outdoor seating. Not
At
backyard. Huh?
East side?
Yes, we ended up at East Side, and I remember us being there and feeling a lot more comfortable. We're like, oh, there's people that look like us. Okay. Yeah. Like the more we spent time, we're like, oh my gosh, there's like every other couple's an interracial couple, and every like other person is either like Latina or Black, or there was I would say it was like 3 major races, and it felt like it was like white, Black, Latina. Yeah. But also like we saw pockets of other things, and like we immediately felt more comfortable. Like, oh, okay, like we look like a lot of people here. Like, it's not that out of the ordinary. It's even more out of the ordinary for us in Detroit than it is for us in Texas, because you walk down the street and there's a Black and Mexican couple, white and Black couple, Mexican and white couple, and it's just like this kind of like, you're like, okay, a lot more comfortable. But there's so many biases that happen, and I just like, even moving back, I'll tell people like, oh, we lived in Texas for a while, and there's this like, ugh. And I'm like, well, actually, it was like it was a very liberated area. I'm like, there's 2 universities there. There's a lot of these very like interesting conversations that are happening because we're in Texas, because the conversations are impacting so many people there. Like there's so many more people opening the Discord for conversation, and allowing it to happen. And there's a protest every other month on the square. And it was one of the things where it's like both sides are protesting. One person has their weekend, the other person has their weekend. It was just interesting to see. And coming from Detroit, where it's like, okay, if there is a protest, usually it's like a lot of like, it's a lot bubbling that has to require that to happen. I feel like in Texas, it was like, okay, this weekend it's this group, and then this weekend it's this group, and then this weekend it's this group, and they take their turn. Like, okay, it's different. I was like, this is very different, but it's also very interesting that it's just like, the conversation's always happening. Obviously, there's a lot of reason for that, but it just seemed like it was eye-opening. I'll say that.
It is eye-opening. Yeah. I remember you're exactly right. There's a lot of stuff happening in Denton, and it makes me happy that people feel that they have a use for their voice, and that's exactly what you're seeing happening out there. And whatever the topic is, and we won't get into any other topics, but I remember stopping by one, and I happened to be driving by. I wasn't planning on stopping, and you could just see the emotion of it. It was very emotional. It was very fueled. I didn't feel like I was going to be in danger, so I stopped in, and I happened to have my camera with me, and I remember standing in the midst of it and just feeling the emotions of everything. And I took photographs, and they were just really impactful to me. And it's just, sometimes you have to stand in the midst of it to understand it, because it's not something I've ever been a part of, in the sense of, I'm not out there, I'm not out there doing that. And it's just another way of people addressing. It's their poetry, basically. It's the way it's the way they express themselves. So I have to admire something like that. And I admire it cautiously, because sometimes, you see the ugly side of that as well. But what I witnessed that particular day, there was a harmony with what they were doing. And so, it was a different experience for me. And I'm so glad I got to photograph it, because I got some really impactful photos from it. And, even if it was just for me, but I look back on that and I remember the emotions that I was feeling, in that particular moment. And so those photos represent that. So it kind of left a little mental marker in my head, because we experience these times, and things are happening around us that we may or may not agree with, and they do leave marks on us. They do leave marks in our heart and our mind, and we worry about the future of our world for whatever generations are to come and whatnot. So those things tend to be eye-opening, obviously, and you sometimes have to stretch your boundaries. And I'm not saying you have to
Yeah.
compromise who you are, but you have to understand that as a human being, we have to connect somehow. How do I connect with somebody who's completely opposed to who and what I am? How do I make that connection? So, and sometimes you never will, and that you just have to accept that and move on and not waste energy where it's not wanted. But eventually
Yeah.
you'll run into someone who's willing to sit and listen. And I think that's where our responsibility as humans lies, within that realm, where just, even if it's just your circle of your people, I'm not saying go out there and get on a platform or anything, but
Yeah.
yeah, make a connection, you know talk to somebody you wouldn't usually talk to just because of your normal routines, not because of, hey, I'm against this, but
Right.
learn from people. Everybody has a story. um, that's where I feel that as humans we connect to others, and we make that we bridge that gap. And I'm not saying that's going to happen in every circumstance, but when it does, it's really beautiful. And because you find
Yeah.
yourself saying, today I sat with somebody that was completely opposite of me, and they surprised me. you know
Hmm.
I had a really neat conversation with that person, and that's where the beauty lies, within human connection and stuff. And then you can spread seeds or whatnot of knowledge and wisdom, exchange experiences, and that's fun to get to know each other and find out people, or a story that you just would have never been exposed to. So
Exactly. And
it's
like
a lot
there's
to
less
unpack.
there's lessons in the not being able to connect too, and like understanding,
Oh,
like, was I open? Was I curious?
yeah,
Was I willing to listen and to share and listen? Was I willing to
yeah,
participate in the conversation? And you said something that reminded me of a friend of mine. His name is Jacob. He's also known as Maisie Susan. He's an artist here in Detroit and like an event curator. And I went to one of his events and he said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, but like, what is your specialty? And not everybody's specialty is protesting, but
yeah,
what is your specialty when it comes to communicating and sharing your voice and like sharing your activism? And everybody's looks a little different, and some people are good at words, and some people are good at organizing, and some people are good at standing in a crowd and making a statement, and some people are good at hosting events, and some people are good, and everybody's activism, the way that it's most natural for them, is still a form of activism and moving the community forward. And so like I had to come to terms with that too. I'm like, I am not the kind of person, like, while I host big events, like if I'm not in charge, sometimes I have a hard time like going in a big group because I'm like, what's gonna happen? I'm always like, my brain is always thinking like, what's the exit plan? What is plan B? How are we gonna organize these people? What if, so that's the way my brain works. So I am not necessarily suited to be a protester.
yeah,
While that is not my artistry, I'll say it that way.
yeah.
But what I am good at is gathering people for an event, for a cause, and then redirecting that energy towards the community at large. And I know that I'm good at that because I've gotten a lot of practice at that. And I used to think like when all of the big protests were happening around like the pandemic and George Floyd's murder and all of that stuff, I was thinking like, am I problematic because I'm not like doing the
Yeah,
thing this am I part of the problem because I'm not like showing up in this way that these
mhm,
people want me to show up? And
yep,
and I had to think about that. I'm like, no, like I'm doing what I'm good at, and I'm
mhm,
doing it at my best capability. I'm doing it at the highest level that I possibly can. I'm reserving that energy for this version, which is still extremely valuable. And him saying
exactly.
that, like, oh, like I am doing my version of activism. And he was like, if you're a graphic designer, if you're making the flyer for the thing, if you're writing the copy for the thing, whatever your version is the version that needs to be had by you, and we all
Exactly.
need it. you know? And so, yeah, like that is my version. And your version looks like the Lost Poet Lounge, and it looks like your podcast, and it looks like poetry, and it looks like photography, and it looks like, you know, and like everybody's looks a little different. There's no cookie cutter way to express your creativity, to impact the community. And everybody's version is different. But I think the one core thing is that it has to be coming from an authentic and real space.
Yeah.
That makes you feel and expresses the mission in a way that's natural, not necessarily natural, but instinctual for you. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a very real feeling. And I mean, you probably said something that everybody can resonate with, where you feel that sort of guilt. Why am I not out there participating? Well, first of all, nobody should make you feel guilty for being in a space that you don't feel comfortable in. Right. So whether it's, you know, because you really don't feel comfortable, you feel unsafe, or you just don't like being around that type of environment of stress, they can be pretty stressful. I mean, you know, if you choose not to do that, you're right. Your voice may be better geared towards something else. So there shouldn't be a guilt process involved in that type of stuff. You know, you walk the journey you want to walk, in the sense that, you know, it's right for you or not a fit for you. And you have to honor that. And people have to be respectful of that too. You know, just because you want a megaphone and you want to use your voice that way doesn't, you know, it doesn't make, just because I like being in front of people and sharing poetry doesn't mean I'm going to be on the courtyard steps. You know, it's a very different emotion. It's a different, you know, vulnerability. It's a different, you know, and some people are really suited for that stuff. And it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of courage. And I'm not saying that certain people don't have courage or they're not brave. It just takes a different type of brave.
It's a different person. It's a different personality. It's different characteristics. It's different
dynamic.
Different, and all of it is important, and all of it is valuable to create like a very bustling community experience. And I'm like, we look back on the Denton days as very like golden era. Like that's where like that's where the clothing swap, that's where the revamp was born. That's where the Creative Fairy Godmother was born. That's where Breezy DJ'd for the first time. That's where we really became ourselves in that community. And what was so interesting and amazing was that everybody was building, because when we moved there, we felt the same way. There was only like food and booze. That's it. You can go drink, or you can go eat, or you can go drink and eat. Like you can do
exactly true.
Those three things. And so like we were like, what else is there? But there was enough space for us to be like, we want to do thing too. You know, like, we want to do this. And like being back in Detroit, it's interesting to see the dynamics where like I still feel like I can say, I want to do a thing too, and I can do it. But you know, there's been times where being back in Detroit, people are like, we don't like the revamp. You guys are charging too much money. This is not, you know, and we've had some people like kick back at us, which is totally fine. You know, we have our grounds to stand on, and we can show up for that, like that people that are saying, no, you guys aren't doing this right. We can be like, actually we are. Here's all the reasons why. Here are all of our receipts, you know, like you just don't understand, and you just need to come or participate. But like, you know, when we were in Texas, there was something about, and maybe it was just the collection of people at the time, but everybody was with it. They were for it. Everybody's new idea, everybody supported. It was like this, like, yeah, you're doing a new thing, and you're doing a new thing, and you're doing a new thing. And like, what else can we do? How can we help you? What can we, you know, it was just this like very cohesive, supportive energy, which I strive to build all of the time. Like that will forever be on my mind, on my heart, of like the way that we felt embraced in Texas. I want people to feel now when they work with me, that like loving feeling, nurturing feeling, ability to express. If you're good at being on the, you know, on the courthouse steps, like how can I support you to get there? Who do I know that I can connect you with? Who, you know, and being that community advocate and connector, you know, instead of saying like, oh, I'm not good at that, so I'm going to beat myself up about it. No. What am I good at? And how can I help you get to that point that you're good at, that I'm not good at, quicker? You know? Oh my gosh.
It's funny that you said that you felt like you could discover who you were in Denton. And I also felt that. It's so weird that you say that because, moving here, I told you, we had to kind of, or I had to kind of find myself and reinvent myself. I mean, I was involved in stuff in Dallas, but it wasn't to the level that it was here because Denton really allowed me to step into myself. I remember, walking, we used to walk on the square. You just never got tired of walking on the square because, it was just, there was always something happening. Denton was very much like every day of the week, you could find something happening, whether it's musically, whether it's artistically, there was always something going on. And I remember one time I was walking the square and I noticed the big window, the radio station window. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a radio station here. And I told my husband, I said, I always wanted to be a radio DJ and I never did it. And I said, one of these days I'm going to be in there. And I remember telling him, I'm going to be in there one day. And lo and behold, I was in there, and it just, the connection that I had with so many people was just, I had the podcast radio show for 3 years. Every Tuesday, I would have a different artist or creative on the show. And you know how it is to book artists, and the challenges and whatnot. And the people here in Denton, it was just a untapped fountain of just artistic beauty. It really was. Yeah. And I was like, every once in a while with scheduling issues, there was a challenge once in a blue moon, but I was really lucky because I'm like, I got to tap in every week to somebody new. And that allowed me to be, I stepped into the role of a radio show podcast host. I never thought I would be there. I did, but I was like, oh, this really happened, and I got an opportunity because of that close-knit community. And I just happened to say, hey, if you ever need an extra DJ, let me know. And they called me and they were like, were you serious about that? And I guess because they had seen me, doing Lost Poet Lounge stuff, it happened. And it was an opportunity that flourished, and I ran with it. And so you just never know these close-knit communities. And like, Denton's not very small, it's a pretty big town for what it is. And
it feels small though.
It does feel small
because everybody knows each other.
And that's the thing. That's the weird thing about Denton. You walk into a place here, somebody's going to know you. Girl, what's up? Hey, I haven't seen you in forever. It was like that everywhere you went, whether you went to pick up a whatever at a shop, and you'd run into somebody there. Then you would go get a coffee, you'd run into somebody there. And then you'd go, hang out with your friends. Everybody was there. And then you would wrap the night up eating, and somebody was there. Yeah, it really is like that. And that was a really wonderful experience, and then there was so much growth happening. Even the business owners, what can I help you with? Hey, you want to do that here? Come on. I mean, I remember doing a pop-up at a freaking gas station because that's Denton, remember? Yeah. You would see, my friend used to perform music in the gas station, at the corner gas station, because that's what beer and music. So it was not an odd thing to see somebody popping up in a strange environment, because it was the norm here in Denton. Yeah. It was such a norm here, but it led to, bringing light to Diva Girl Ellie. It led to Lost Poet Lounge, and I'm very thankful for those experiences and the people that I met. You, obviously, the revamp. Oh my God. When you did the revamp here, I was like, how in the world did she put this together? Because there was just so many cogs spinning at one time, and you were just like the magician with all these little balls up in the air. And I'm like, oh my God.
So much though. Like the first ones we did were at Studio 116 in the backyard of the salon. Like I remember meeting Rain. I was literally like shooting headshots for the Denton Black Film Festival behind the dumpster behind the studio.
I remember
that like that had the what color was it? It was like a plum, like I don't remember what color. It was like a deep red wall. They had a wall, they had a mural on the other side. So, I'm wandering around with this girl taking headshots of her, and I was like, oh, this is a cute place. Let me just take pictures over here. Let's do her headshots here. She's young, she's energetic. Let me get her some good vibes. And I remember Rain's taking out the trash, And I'm like in the gutter, basically. I'm like in the dumpster and I'm like shooting like at the wall. And she's like, "Are you a photographer?" And I was like, "To me?" Like, yeah.
Yep.
She's like, "You should come inside." And so we scheduled another date and I came in and like Allie was there and they were like, "What are you into? What do you do?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm just figuring it out. I like to take pictures. I like to like host events and stuff." And they were like, "We want to host more events here." And we ended up throwing the Beats party there. That was the first event we did there, which was to showcase Labrie's artwork because Labrie has been making music for years. And he's been kind of like, you know, he'll do stuff every once in a while, like before. But when we went to Texas, I was like, "You need to put your music out. You need to meet the other musicians here. You need to meet the other DJs here. Like, you need to meet people." And I was like, "Let's do a Beats party," because he had just like did this whole like album for his 30th birthday and for this transition. Because he was here for 3 months before I got there. He was there.
Yeah.
And he had moved out early and he was by himself, you know, and I was back at home. And we were figuring out the transition. He couldn't find a house and he found Sycamore Bend Beach. And so he was over there all the time, like connecting with the nature and water. And he produced this whole album. And I was like, "We need to put this out there. We need to meet the other people." And they were like, "Okay, you could do it over here." We had like a Bluetooth speaker. We put it on Instagram. We didn't know anybody. We were like, "Submit your music in an MP3 or whatever." And so we like put it on this like playlist and played it on this awful speaker. And everybody's music sounded terrible, but it was like, it was great.
It worked.
We met the Breakfast Boys there. We met Mikey. We met Sanford. We met like all of those people. They all showed up, all of the guys. And it was like immediate. It was like, "Oh, we're supposed to be friends, all of us." And then, so they started doing the Breakfast and Beats. And this is just the origin story of the revamp. So they're doing Breakfast and Beats every Sunday at Backyard on Bell. We go every Sunday. And I remember going, like getting dressed up. I remember the first one I ever went to, I wore this like big, huge sun hat. It was like really aggressive. And I was like, I am going to just show up the way that I want to show up. So I was like, the skin out. It was summertime. It was like summertime in Texas. So, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So this huge sun hat on, these glasses. And this was like, I was like, I'm about to like just show up. And I get there and like Dalton and Katie are there. Lofty and Gabby are there. And they're like, "Who are these people?" Because I'm like at Backyard and Bell. It's like a hole in the wall bar. And like all diva'd out. And
you're like, "Hello, darling."
Good morning, happy Sunday, you know. And it was like, they accepted. I was like, "Oh my gosh, people are gonna make fun of me." Like, that feeling of like, "Oh my God, are they gonna like judge me?" Not knowing who was gonna be there. And they were like, "Oh my God, you look so cute." And I was like, "Thank you." And then for the next several months, we were going to Breakfast and Beats, and it was the same group every time. Every time. And we were, by the end of the summer, we were like,
"So like, there's something going on here.
Do you guys like want to do anything else? Like, what else can we do?" You know, because it was the same crew every time, which was great. But we were all like, "Are you sick of each other's face? Are you sick of me? Are you sick of that?" So we were just like, "Let's do something else." And I remember pitching a clothing swap to Allie and Rain because Allie was managing the space, and she was like, "Let's do it." And we did it. We invited the Breakfast Boys. They were called the Breakfast Boys at the time. We invited them to DJ. They all DJ'd, and like 20 people showed up to the first swap. And we had 10 bags to donate.
Yeah, and I remember that. I ran into photos recently of that.
And then I remember thinking like, "Oh my God, that was a huge fail."
No.
Like, and Mariah, that's where I met Mariah. Mariah was like, "You have to do this again. Please do it again. And I want to help." And I was like, "Okay, I guess we'll do it again." And we did this photo shoot, and that's where the brand ambassadors were born. You were one of our first brand ambassadors, and we didn't know what we were doing, but like, I was just like, "I have a camera. Y'all are all cute. I make a flyer. Like, please model for me."
I would have never known that was your first time doing it. I thought you were doing it all along.
I'd done shoots before, like Labrie's cousin Emery, he's got a clothing line brand called Emily. And before we moved away, I was doing like huge like modeling shoots for him all the time because it was like, "Oh, you have all this stuff. I know all these models. Let's do a thing." And, so like Emery, Breezy, and I would like come together and we bring all these people, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. Like this, I was like, this is my idea. This is my vision. I'm bringing it to life instead of like riding on somebody else's idea and like bringing their vision to life. And yeah, the second one, there was like way more people, and then there was way more people. And the next thing you know, we're like a couple hundred people deep. And I remember Breezy hated being called a breakfast boy. He's like, I'm not a boy, I'm a man. And I was like, you are a man. What are you going to do about it? And I remember that us all being together at another bar. I'm seeing the bar. I can't think of the name of it. We're all together. All the breakfast boys are there. All the girlfriends are there. And we're all talking, and we're like talking about it. And we came up with another version, like the group of us, and we came up with something modern. They changed and rebranded as something modern. Everybody, now all these DJs are part of this collective, and they're getting booked every weekend. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all of them. And that was where Sanford Black was like, you're like a creative fairy godmother. And I was like, I am like that a little bit. And he named me. I was like,
that's so cool.
Forever. And that was like where all that was born. It was like in Florida, Texas. And like, it's never left me. And every single time I show up, I feel more and more like that. I'm like, this is who I am. This is the definition of who I am. Nobody can take this from me. Like, this name was gifted to me and it's mine, and it makes sense.
It makes sense to you. And it's weird because you think of a fairy godmother and you think of somebody floating around with a little wand sprinkling glitter everywhere. And as cute as that is really what you're like, because you sprinkle happiness on people. And it's just that, like you said, you didn't know how people were going to accept you, but you walked in your beauty, and people automatically, you and Labrie. And it's so funny because everybody's so connected. Mikey used to be on the radio right before me. So I used to see what he was, sharing. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's pretty cool. Because obviously you could hear everything in the studio and outside. And I'm like, that's some cool music. That is some cool this. Or, oh, he's really cool. Or that girl is really, tapping into the vibe. And so I got to see all his guests before I would do my show, because he was on before me. Wow. So I would see you guys all the time, together. And it's so cool that you guys evolved, or, the Breakfast Boys evolved into something modern. I remember that transition. I remember thinking, oh, they've got some really cool, chill beats that I wasn't expecting for Denton. Because, Denton does have a huge music scene, and it's either jazz or it's, whatever's playing at Andy's. And so it was completely different to me to hear that sound that, Labrie was playing with.
They're all like lo-fi beats, very like electronica, techno, dance, but they're all like, all those guys are pushing the envelope for beats and like for hip hop, and like it was just a different vibe because like we're from Detroit, so we hear a lot of hip hop. We're like, we're the Motown, we're Motor City. We have a lot of musicians here. Same thing in Denton. We were like, these are like classically trained jazz musicians. Yeah. And like the something modern was like paving the way. And like for Labrie, like for both of us, this was like a very beautiful experience. That was like, Mikey was interviewing Labrie. Labrie's getting all this press. Breezy's like coming out in Denton as like an artist. He's always been an artist. He's always like had his art up and out. And that's how I met him at an art show. But like, I feel like he stepped into Labrie Jones. He was like, oh, I can be center stage. I can entertain people. I can influence with my artwork. I can. Yeah. And like, it was just a beautiful thing to see him like blossom and grow into like the man that he's becoming. And even now, like he's working on this, like launching his like painting.
Oh, that's awesome.
Career. And he's working with an artist coach, and he's like really studying his like artist manifesto and like, what does he stand for? And like building his artistry as a business. And it's beautiful to watch because like he's doing that. And I'm taking a business class to expand the revamp the community, an event space where we support everybody's events and curation and build what the feeling that we were feeling in Denton, Texas. Like, this, we long for it. We really do.
Yeah. It does leave that impression on you. Like I said, you get that itch and you can see the potential of the magic that you can spread, and you're like, I gotta do this again. And maybe it's not the exact same feeling and vibe, but every experience is different, and that's really what it is. You just tapping into that vibe, you know, and it really is a feeling of just gratitude, you know, of appreciation, of feeling, you know, welcomed. And when you put on those events, you know, something that you did on that scale that you did with the revamp was amazing, because, you know, I know you were working as a photographer before, but I remember being on the square and you had a trail of like 20 people following you from this spot to that spot to this spot. I mean, my husband and Labrie were literally holding all of our wardrobes and walking around with us. There were so many models. There were so many, you know, there was photographers there, and we're just literally traipsing back and forth on the town doing our photo shoot. And we were just having just a great time. It was so much fun. And so when I see your revamp for Detroit and your posts and stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're just doing this. I remember doing that. That was so much fun. And you just left such an impression on Denton, both of you, you know, Labrie with his music and you doing all of that stuff. You know, I remember hearing Breezy's music and I'm like, I want that at my Lost Poet Lounge show. And he gifted me with that one time. So I enjoyed being able to share those talents and, you know, spread them across, you know, one of my events. I absolutely love the fact that, you know, we have, you know, I've had dancers, I've had artists, you know, painting a live painting, I've had the DJ, I've had, you know, literally you try to grab little pieces and bits and pieces of people to share in that, well, I do in that show, so that you can entice people with different passions. You know, it's not always just straight line poetry. I try to make it multifaceted so that your sensories are being activated as well. So yeah, it's definitely, you know, I'm very thankful for the experience I had with Denton, with the revamp, with, you know, even Breezy, his music and stuff, and just sharing the vibe. And that's probably why I named it the Denton vibe, because it really was a Denton vibe out there. And, you know, there was something very special and unique about being in Denton at that time. It was really a thriving community, and it still is, but it was very different at that time. I will say it was just exploding. It was literally exploding. So I'm glad I got to be a part of it. I'm glad I met you.
So glad I met you. You're just an angel, and I love you so much. And we're already over an hour. Like, I could talk to you all day, and we should probably schedule another one. Even on camera. I've dreamed of like doing like a revamp reunion in Texas. Like, I've dreamed of it. The next clothing swap's in September, and we have a really amazing partner this time. And I've dreamed of like inviting, like, when I open Revamp the Community, the event space that we're building, I in my dreams, I'm sending a personal invite to every single person that participated in the revamp in Denton, Texas, to come out and participate, and getting a block of hotel rooms and getting them all to come out and participate, because like that community built this vision, you know, and it's not, and I don't take that for granted. And I feel so connected. And I know a lot of people aren't in Denton anymore, but like, even still, I'm like, there's so much love there, and there's so much artistry there, artistry in the community building that I've taken with me. And I like reflect on that time all the time. I'm like, how can we replicate this? How can we do it again here? How can we build that here? How can we activate people like that here? You know, how can I turn this into a formula that I can teach other people to do other places, you know? So it was a beautiful, beautiful time, and honored to know you, honored to be in your life, honored to like be in your circle. Before we go, 2 questions. 1, what's your last and final piece of advice for everybody watching today?
My last and final: challenge yourself to step out of your own box. You know, find your voice. Don't be afraid of what you have to say to yourself. Somebody else might need to hear what you have to say. Like I said, always treat everybody with class, dignity, and respect, just as a general rule. And I know that most of us, adhere to that, but, step out of that box and make a connection with someone that you wouldn't typically find yourself making a connection with, and be genuine about it. Don't just tick a box and okay, done. Make a connection, but definitely challenge yourself, lean into your emotions, and, walk with your emotions and be poetic.
I love it. And where can people find you? Where can they learn more about your poetry, photography, Lost Poet Lounge events, your podcast, all of that good stuff?
You can find me as Diva Girl Ellie. That's my main Instagram. I'm usually on Instagram. That's where I'm most comfortable. Lost Poet Lounge on Instagram, and then the Curve Culture with Diva Girl Ellie, or Curve Culture with Diva Girl Ellie, as the other podcast. And so you'll find my poetry, Lost Poet Lounge, on Spotify, iTunes, all the major podcast platforms, usually music related platforms. But yeah, you can find me on those. I'm there, definitely. If anybody's in the Denton area, I'm inviting you out to the Lost Poet Lounge Soul Bloom, June 27th, Thursday at Greater Denton Arts Council. And I know that's a long shot for everybody in Detroit, but hey, you know what? I watch all your Detroit stuff too whenever I can, because it's so much fun. So I hope it touches somebody somewhere. And, I'm so honored to be a part of your show today. And thank you for inviting me. And it's such a pleasure to be in your presence, Amanda. I love you so much.
You too. You're amazing. I love you forever and ever. It doesn't matter how many miles, how many months, how many years goes by. Like, I will always be thrilled and excited to talk to you. I love you so, so much.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for waking up so early for me. I really, really appreciate you. And thank you for your time and your wisdom and your love and nurturing and all of the things. I miss you so much. I want to
miss you. I know, hugs. I love you, girl. Thank you so much.
You. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching the Let's Glow Show. Again, I'm Amanda Sweet, the Creative Fairy Godmother. And we are going to be coming back next week with another episode from another creative entrepreneur. If you're ever curious about joining us as an interviewee, hit me up on Instagram. I'm always down and always looking for amazing people and amazing stories. We are hosting another clothing swap September 7th. Tentatively, we might change the date, but it will be in September, and we are looking for brand ambassadors. So if ganging up with a huge group of people and doing a huge photo shoot around town sounds exciting to you, and community service sounds exciting to you, and you're into clothing and thrifting, then you might be the perfect brand ambassador. So hit me up for that. Thank you so, so much. Have an amazing and magical week, and we will see you next Wednesday. Bye. Sorry, I have a million tabs open.